Hey, hello. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and welcome to the OnStage Colorado podcast. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca. As usual, we are going to be discussing some of the recent shows we've seen, talking through some theater news, and then we'll also be discussing our top 10 Colorado headliners, which are a roundup of upcoming shows that we think are of interest. And for our main topic this week, we are going to be diving deep into the subject of theater criticism itself.
Yeah, we're going to critique the critiquers ourselves and dig into some of what goes into our process of reviewing theater here in Colorado. So stick around for that in just a little bit. Later in the show, we have an interview I did with Rhianna, DeVries, and Tess Neel from Denver Theatre Ensemble. So this is a relatively new theater company started by these two DU alums, along with Ina Marlowe, a well-known Chicago theater artist who's now a theater professor at DU. And I think they had been in a scene study class of hers, and that's how the ball got rolling. So it's an interesting conversation about how they came to form the company, what they want it to be, their upcoming season, and some of the challenges that come with starting something new.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to hearing that conversation a little bit later in the episode. But as usual, let's kick things off with what we've seen recently.
Yeah, well, you've seen more than me. I actually, not by design, but just the last couple of weeks, I have not gotten out to shows. I was sick last weekend, and then the weekend before, I was in Mexico City for a family event. So I've been kind of off the circuit. But you've been out there. What have you been out to see?
Quite a few different things, some really interesting stuff. I started my theater activities off this week by going over to the Three Leeches space in Lakewood to check out Steven Dietz's production of Fiction. Now, Steven Dietz is probably a familiar name to folks. He's a Denver boy, born and raised.
Friend
and
of the
many
pod?
of his plays. Yeah, friend of the pod. Many of his plays are produced. Yeah, quite a bit. But this is not really one of them. But I would say it's a really fantastically intricate love triangle about really complex love. You're following these two writers who you watch them meet and develop this really seemingly honest relationship. Then the wife gets a diagnosis that she's about to die. It's terminal cancer. And she asks to read her husband's journals. And you just see, as played by Paul Jaquith, his face falls when she asks, because he knows that there's something in that journal that is going to destroy all of their years of trust. And then you watch that in real time, his wife read the journals, and then kind of on separate parts of the stage, these scenes from the past are played out. And it's kind of complicated because, as it's established early on, writers are natural liars. And so you're never fully sure if what you're reading or what you're hearing is the truth or a lie. And that goes all the way to the very, very end of the show. I found this to be very entertaining. It was really tautly directed by Melissa Leach, the director over there. 3-person cast, good use of this small kind of thrust space over there. This is formerly Benchmark Theater space, and before that it was the Edge Theater. So familiar to folks in Colorado, but it can be a tricky space to use correctly, and I think this is a really good match for that space.
Cool. So that's Fiction at Three Leeches in Lakewood. And then you saw Just Like Us at Su Teatro, which you just had your review posted yesterday. This was another one you thought was a pretty strong show.
It was. The original production was originally produced back in 2013. It's based on a book by Helen Thorpe, who is a journalist and at the time, mayor of John Hickenlooper, mayor of Denver. And this is based on her book about these 4 immigrants who she follows from high school through college. 2 of them are documented, 2 of them are undocumented. And she's kind of chronicling, originally for articles, she thinks, their friendship and how these kind of mixed statuses affect them as they are applying to schools and kind of trying to acquire jobs. But it's really becomes this kind of complicated question about who gets to be an American. Why do we scrutinize immigrants more than our own politicians who are also human beings and commit terrible crimes? I mean, I think that particular part of the show rung out to me in particular as we sit in 2026.
Yeah.
But I found this to be just a really well done production. It's co-directed by Mika, who is daughter of Toni Garcia over there, and Fidel Gomez, who is co-directed over there. Really, I think it's a really sharp production. One of the better things that I've seen from the company, and it's a cool a chance to see a Denver story told by a Denver-based cast. Although it was done at the Denver Center, that was largely out-of-state folks who were in that cast. So as Mika Garcia, she told folks on opening night, this is the first time that people in Denver are able to see a Denver-based cast do this show about Denver.
That's great. That's great. And then another more familiar title, A Chorus Line.
Yeah, this was done over at the Lakewood Cultural Center, the 1975 musical about what it takes to be a Broadway dancer. This kind of story will always, I think, be relevant to the theater community because it tells it's about putting yourself out there and either getting accepted or rejected, which is kind of something that you are constantly doing in that field. And this musical requires a bunch of dancers. You're watching 17 dancers who are selected for this audition. And the performance now has put together a really strong ensemble of really powerful movers over there. This show is one that I quite like, and I think that there is really a lot to appreciate here. I had a couple, as I'll get into in my review, there are a couple kind of directorial choices. The show is famously set on a bare stage with often nothing more than mirrors, and there is an element of a camera that is employed in the back of the stage that is kind of sometimes it's on, sometimes it's not on, and you're able to see the action kind of projected on the screen. And you're not ever sure kind of why. That was one element that I think kind of I quibbled with. And then there were a couple of pacing issues in the second act, which I'll get into a little bit more in my review. But overall, I think this is a really strong production of A Chorus Line with some really exceptional dancing and some standout performances.
Okay. And then I'm also looking forward to seeing your review of Daughtering, which is another, I believe, a new work by a female playwright here in Colorado. I think of 3 or 4 new plays by female playwrights in the last month or so.
That's right. This is by Nina Alice Miller. It's a Dirty Fish Theater world premiere over at the Dairy Arts Center in Boulder. And it follows these 3 generations of women. It's a 4-person cast. You have the grandmother, who is Olga. You have her daughter, Lisa, and then Lisa's daughter, Natalie, as well as Mare, who is Natalie's cousin and the daughter of Lisa's sister, who is deceased, because that's kind of the conceit of the whole, one of the conceit of the show is that you're watching all these different daughters gather together at the 10-year anniversary of the death of their grandfather and Mare's mother, Julie. And so there are these 2 urns that are at the center of the show, and the grandmother believes that the ashes are coming to life. There is a sense of unease in this house. And you're basically then watching this awkward homecoming in which there are a lot of things that have not been said directly that are being put out on the table for the first time. It's really intimately staged. There is this kitchen set that is very believable at this home table. The grandmother is constantly baking cookies and putting them out for everybody to consume. And then there is this room that's elevated above that is not discussed for the majority of the show, but it becomes abundantly clear this is Julie's room as it kind of unpacks, and it's just been preserved exactly as it is. And I found the show, there are some things that didn't 100% work about it. There's not a ton of action until the second act. There was a lot of really incredibly poignant moments. Nina is a really gifted writer. There's a lot of really lyrical, poetic passages in here that I'll be thinking about. There's this incredible moment of simultaneous yoga staged between mother and daughter at the end of Act 1 that is just a really beautiful piece of theater making. And so while I think that there are a couple of bumps along the way, this was a really exciting new work that a lot worked about.
All right. Great. Look forward to reading that review. So, all right. Well, moving on to the news, we had a season announcement from the Arvada Center. So, they are doing Misery in September in their main stage. And then in the black box, they're going to be doing Neil Simon's Stalwart Barefoot in the Park. Christmas season, they're doing Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And then in February, Doubt by John Patrick Shanley. And they'll close out their season in March with Dear Evan Hansen. So nothing too groundbreaking there, but I would say, crowd-pleasing shows. I've never seen Doubt, so I look forward to seeing that. That's a show that I think that's been produced quite a number of times here in Colorado. OnStage Colorado is brought to you by the Aurora Fox Arts Center, whose production of Fat Ham runs March 27th through April 19th. James L. James' play reinvents Shakespeare's masterpiece Hamlet with a delectable comic tragedy about a queer Southern college kid confronting the ghost of his father in the backyard. Tickets at aurorafoxartscenter.org. OnStage Colorado is sponsored in part by Colorado Candlelight, presenting the classic musical Hello, Dolly, featuring humor, romance, energetic dance, and some of the greatest songs in musical theater history through April 4th. Also sponsoring OnStage Colorado is Miners Alley Performing Arts Center in Golden, presenting Paul Stroley's comedy My Mother and the Michigan-Ohio War through March 29th. It's a laugh-out-loud look at the battles we never outgrow, no matter how old we get. Tickets at minersalley.com. OnStage Colorado is brought to you by Curious Theater Company, whose production of Birthday Candles runs March 7th through April 15th. Noah Hadel's play covers 5 generations, an infinity of dreams, and one cake baked over a century. Tickets at curioustheater.org. OnStage Colorado also receives support from the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, whose production of Mary Jane runs at the Boulder Dairy Center May 1st through 24th. Amy Herzog's play is a story of a mother's unbounded love and the makeshift circle of women who support her. Tickets at petc.org.
It has, but it is a really good show. Definitely looking forward to seeing that produced with a budget behind it over at the Arvada Center. Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is apparently something that the center used to do a ton around the Christmas holiday season and was like a big box office hit for them. And so I think, I was, like you mentioned, this is a very commercial season overall. They're definitely trying to build back audiences by programming titles that if people haven't seen, they're at least familiar with, like Stephen King's Misery or who wrote Barefoot in the Park? That's Neil Simon,
That's Neil
right?
Simon, yeah.
Yeah. All really familiar names. I think probably the most interesting thing on the season is they're doing the regional premiere of Dear Evan Hansen, and I wouldn't exactly call that super, super risky. That's a musical that's come through the Buell. It's got a proven track record, but it'll be nice to see that one staged over at the center with some pretty substantial resources behind it.
Yep. And then you had news from Denver's Sunnyside neighborhood about the Yates Theater. What's this all about?
Yeah, so there have been decades of efforts to try to reopen the historic Yates Theater over in Denver's Berkeley neighborhood. And as of last week, it took a major step forward. The Denver Board of Adjustments approved a critical zoning adjustment that will allow the long vacant space to reopen as an independent cinema at 44th Avenue and Yates Street. It's this really cool cottage-style building that kind of blends in seamlessly to the homes and other architecture that surrounds it. It was originally built back in 1926 and officially opened the next year as a 500-seat silent movie house, but has largely sat vacant since the 1980s. And there have been several projects that have been trying to organize over the years to fill the space, but now married couple, Macy Lau and Kyle Hagen, they signed a 10-year lease in 2015, and now their plans to open the Yates as a 300-seat indie cinema with an attached hipster lounge that they're calling Way Station is going to be able to move forward.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah, so that I know. So it's Sunnyside or Berkeley neighborhood. Is that kind of on the north side of town?
It is, yeah. It's definitely kind of on the northwest side of Denver, and it's more of a residential neighborhood, which is part of why there have been a lot of hiccups to reopen the building. A lot of the neighbors don't want this space to be reopened actually as an event space because it's going to be loud. There's going to be alcohol sales here. There are going to be events that are potentially late. And so in order to make this happen and get this approved, the couple actually signed a good neighbor agreement with the neighborhood association to make it happen, meaning that they've agreed to not have any events past midnight, for instance. They've got limitations on the signage, the type of lighting that they can put up, how parking is going to work, the flow of traffic in and out of the theater, maximum number of folks. They made a lot of concessions in order to make it happen, which I think is honestly good. That's a good faith way to approach the neighborhood. They're like, listen, we want to be a part of this. And so this G&A was really a core part of why this vote was able to go off without a hitch.
Mm-hmm. All right. The next piece here was, you titled it Breaking News. It's hard to be an artist. And I saw some of this action on Facebook too. Do you want to describe this piece?
Yeah, I wrote that title for this section a little bit tongue-in-cheekly because it's not exactly breaking news, but there was some pretty significant chatter on Facebook in early March when local actor Justin Papas posted on Facebook in the Colorado Theater People group the question, is anyone actually able to make a decent living off of theater alone? I'm not talking acting and waiting tables. I'm talking enough to take a family on a ski trip one time a year working on stage. And that question really went off like a bomb. As of recording, there are 115 comments on that initial post. And while many responded, yes, it is possible to make a living as an actor, they did admit that it's incredibly hard to do without another source of income, and they answered a definitive no to the ski trip part of that question.
Yeah. Nobody can afford to go on a ski trip anymore. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, John, in his piece in the Denver Gazette, talked about how most of the people making it are in full-time positions in like administration, fundraising, education, marketing, but only a handful of actors manage to cobble together a full-time living. But that's kind of it's unfortunate. At the same time, it's like, it's what it is. It's like, I'm going to be a coal miner and I'm not going to complain too much. I'm not going to get dirty, or something like that. If you're going to be, at the same time, like, as writers, we know that it's, you can't just survive on, I don't know, a certain type of writing. Like, we do theater writing, but we also do other types of writing to supplement our income, some of which
Absolutely.
is not nearly as fun as writing about theater, but we do it for the money, right?
Yeah, I was like, this conversation, honestly, I think is just happening to a lot of different parts of the economy. This is not very different from what I kind of think through as a journalist these days. I kind of have to have multiple gigs. Luckily, they are all in the journalism writing kind of world, at least right now. But you kind of have to have multiple streams of income in order to make it work in this really just fickle state of the world we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd still add the caveat, though, that I wish actors and people that are doing great work on stage could somehow be paid a living wage. They should all get $100,000 a year or more and have ski vacations. It's just unfortunately not. People doing other types of work are always going to get more for some reason. It's just the way the world is. So. All right. Well, let's move on to our main topic, theater criticism. So to set the stage, Toni, you recently been getting a lot of feedback on some of your reviews. And I would say part of that is that as you've matured as a theater critic in the last few years, you've felt more comfortable, writing more sharp reviews about things that, that didn't add up to you for a particular show. And I think, as the person who's editing your pieces, that, you do a really good job of explaining, if you say something is not good, just say, that sucked. You take pains to describe it, but you've been getting some blowback. And do you want to talk a little bit about what that's been like?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, over the years, I think when I first started critiquing in 2022, I didn't really have nearly as strong of a kind of a frame of reference, essentially. I was starting as kind of just getting to know the theater community. And so I was able to write reviews basically just about what I had seen the few shows before. Now that I've been doing this for about 5 years, I've been able to see multiple productions from most companies. I have been able to see different designers, different actors around town. And so I think that I just have been able to kind of raise that critical bar by just being able to have like a stronger sense of like what's going on in the community. Is this really an exceptional production for this company? Is this more of the same, or is this kind of a step back for them? And I think my role as a critic, what I've really been hoping to do particularly over the past couple of years, is I feel I've started to really find my critical voice, is help the theater community become better. I think that's the ultimate goal of my position here as a critic, is to spotlight the good, be like, this is really exceptional, be like, this is the stuff that is holding things back if there are those elements in a production. And yeah, I mean, I've been really excited to hear engagement from the community. I've heard a lot of people who are supportive of the work. They found that the criticism is helpful. And at the same time, I've also had quite a few people who reach out and be like, hey, this was mean, or this hurt my feelings, or I wish you had been just a little bit nicer in how you say that. And I really am appreciative of those comments and those feedback. I read pretty much everything everybody sends me or writes on a comment and things. And I really enjoy that because it helps me just think more critically about the things that I write and its impact out in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just like people putting things on stage open themselves up to criticism, certainly we are publishing publicly and we are open to criticism as well. And sometimes we get something wrong, things like that. But of course, the nature of criticism, it is subjective. It's one person's opinion a lot of times. And, as opinions go, not everybody's going to agree with it. So, we noted, just recently a performer who didn't like one of your reviews posted on Facebook about their depression and saying they thought that you hated them, which obviously you don't. It's strong stuff, but it does speak to how impactful a review can be on someone's feelings, their ego, their self-worth as a theater artist. And that's why we try very hard to ensure that when we do criticize things negatively, we explain why. And all of our reviewers get our manual of style and procedure. And I'll just read just a part of it on this topic. So our direction is, it's okay to point out flaws, but do so in a respectful manner. Criticism should be kind and, if possible, constructive, never cruel. Our goal is to help a production be a better version of itself. Our goal is never to tear anyone down or point out flaws in a hurtful way. So if you're criticizing a show, it's important to explain why exactly you're doing so. Simply saying something is bad or whatever is not sufficient.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important, the never being cruel and focusing on being constructive is a key part of what we really try to do at OnStage Colorado, and what I try to do anywhere that I write a review is, I've said this on the podcast before, but I adhere to a principle myself that I'm not going to write anything in a review, in a story, that I would not be comfortable reading out loud to whomever I wrote it about. It might be really awkward. It might be uncomfortable. They may be like, I really disagree with you and I wish you didn't say it like that or whatnot. And that's totally, all of those are valid, but it's going to be from a fundamental level of, I have a respect for you as an artist and as a human being. And this is my genuine, honest, authentic reaction to the show. You can take it or leave it. I am one schmuck with an opinion. Everybody has an opinion. You can take it or you can leave it. I hope it's helpful. That's the ultimate kind of way I to approach it, is I want to provide that helpful feedback so that the next show down the line is able to be even better than where you are now. But if you don't want to hear it, at least I'm going to be incredibly respectful about it, is That's what I try to do anyway. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can speak for both of us when I say would always much prefer to write glowing reviews and let people know that a show is awesome. But clearly that can't always be the case. And the alternative to whitewash every show and ignore any flaws that we notice is dishonest. So for one thing, the whole premise of a review, whether it's a theatrical production or a review of a toaster on Amazon, is to share your true opinion about something with the goal of informing the public. So get this thing, watch that show, or don't.
Yeah, and for theaters, if all they ever hear from critics is just how wonderful they're doing, even if that's not necessarily true, then it leads to a false sense of quality of what they're delivering. And I should add, charging people for, because believe me, in 2026, audiences are discerning. If you have a technical hiccup, they notice. You can recover from it. I definitely factor in recovery as a huge part. It's a live experience. If you're able to make the mistake into a moment and kind of move forward, bonus points for that as long as the error doesn't happen again. But if it's a consistent thing, like for instance, I was over at the Lakewood Cultural Center, and during the second act of a chorus line, there were a lot of sections in which the audio mixing was just massive feedback and things. And audience members were turning around and looking at the booth and being like, what's going on? People notice these things. And when you're charging people for full price for a ticket, you better be able to deliver an experience that is up to that price of a ticket. And so those are just kind of like, that's one specific example. I don't mean to harp on that production of a chorus line. That's just what I saw recently this weekend.
Yeah. It reminds me of like another factor is that, how we evaluate professional productions versus those for, say, a community theater. And there's no doubt that when we review something like a professional Broadway touring show coming through the Denver Center, we're looking at it a little differently than, say, a community production from Elemental Theater or something like that. And that's just, that's fair.
Yeah, 1000%. I feel that it is not appropriate to hold a touring production that goes to the Buell standard and like a community theater production to the same level and expect them to deliver exactly the same thing. The productions coming through the Buell have exponentially more resources, and they are so much more expensive for audiences, and they take a lot more work for people to get to. They have to factor in parking or other transportation options in order to get to the center. That can get expensive quickly. Tickets are often upwards of $100 just to get in the door. I know there are rush options and some student discounts and things like that are available, but if you're not in the know, if you're just going out on a date night, that's expensive. And so, for instance, like I was extremely critical of the touring production of The Notebook that came through. And I don't feel bad about it at all because that production was really expensive. It had multiple technical failures in which the show quite literally had to stop and hold in the opening night. And the show itself really was flimsy, and I saw tons of audience members fleeing throughout the show, signaling that they clearly, even though they had paid for their ticket, did not think the experience was worth it. I don't feel bad about that at all. But if I see a community theater production in which things are not firing on all cylinders, I'm going to give them a lot more grace. I'm not going to say that it's perfect. That's also dishonest and I don't think acceptable. I have to be, even when you are in that community theater space, they deserve an honest review. But I don't expect them to have the most amazing set that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars or seasoned equity actors. But I do kind of expect a base level of kind of competence. Why did you do this show? Is there a reason for you doing it? Does it say something about our moment? Oh, that's interesting. If so, if not, why not? Why are we doing this show? Does it move? Is there unnecessary clunky blocking? Those are simple, technical things that no matter your size or scale, you can deliver on. And so I kind of expect that even at the community theater level. But yeah, I'm not going to be nearly as critical or expecting the same level of production value at that scale.
Right. But they're putting something on stage for public consumption and also inviting us to review their show. Usually it's rare, but we do occasionally get requests to not review a show, which we always honor. Also rare, then there have been a few times when we've chosen not to review a show we've seen. Usually it's because the show maybe it was sort of a disaster from start to finish and there was not really anything good to say about it, or because it was so off the wall that, at least for me, I didn't feel qualified to write about it. Like, I've seen a few shows where I'm like, I felt like I was watching something in Swedish, or I just didn't connect with it at all and didn't feel like I could write about it intelligently. But have you ever had any of those, Toni?
I can't say that I have yet. If I've been assigned a show, I usually try to find something to say about it, or do some research if I'm like totally lost, so that I can maybe help guide audience members and be like, I was also lost. Here's a bit more research on X, Y, and Z to can you fill in the gaps and what I wish the play had maybe said or done. Well, but no, I haven't yet actually not reviewed.
Okay.
Maybe, I'm sure that will happen someday, but it just hasn't yet.
So I was, when I was thinking about this topic, I poked around a little bit. In the OnStage blog, which is a national, blog about theater, they've written about this a number of times, specifically about community theater reviews. And so I just wanted to hit on a couple of points that they made on a couple of pieces. So in 2024, their writer Skip Maloney, in a piece titled "We Should Review Community Theater Honestly," said, overly nice reviews are the norm and they hurt everyone. So, the assumption that unpaid performers can't be held to professional standards is, quote, nonsense. Budget doesn't determine quality, which you could argue that. I've certainly, we've seen equity actors on stage at the Buell who didn't think were very good. And also some actor in a tiny little community theater who just blew doors, So yeah, that can be true. Like you said, soft reviews can mislead audiences and let performers think they're doing good work when they're not. And also talked about, like, many community theater reviewers also like the background to assess a production properly, especially the director's role, which is a great point. But that brutal honesty serves the community better than just kindness. And then in the same blog, the same publication in 2025, Chris Peterson wrote, How Honest is Too Honest, and talked about a meaningful difference between honest critique and cruelty, which is something I think we can all agree on, that there's no place for that. And that, good reviews meet the work in context, and, like we were just talking about, not comparing a community theater to a production of a Broadway revival, but not giving it a free pass either. And then finally, he also wrote, inviting a critic, this is to theaters, means opening yourself up to the possibility that they might not like your show. And that doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them the bad guy. It doesn't even make them unkind. It just means they had an experience with the work you put into the world, and their job is to speak truthfully about it. Sometimes that truth feels great. Sometimes it stings. Both are valid.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is just kind of part of it about anything when which you put yourself out there. I mean, like we started the conversation with, we both put ourselves out there every single time we write a review. Our names are on it, and we get engagement from people who say it's good and people who say it's bad. That's all valid. That's total. And I think that's just a part of the process of putting yourself out into the public sphere. And I think just building up a tolerance for that is an important part of existing in the real world.
Can you talk just a little bit about when you're writing, whether it's a less flattering review or just part of maybe it's an overall great show, but there was something you were talking about. What are the kind of pains you take to explain the critique, and how hard is that to do?
I would say that is definitely the hardest part of the job. As you said earlier, it's much more fun to write reviews that are when you're getting to share about this incredible experience you had, and you just get to gush and you're like, this is something that you cannot miss. It takes a lot more, or I take a lot more work whenever I'm having to write a more critical review, because I really want to make sure that if I'm being critical, I'm being specific and I'm being fair. And I'm trying to, if it didn't work for me, then who might it work for? Can I connect it to some other folks? So I kind of think of it in those three parts. I really try to lay out exactly what went wrong. For instance, during chorus line, there were multiple soundboard failures during the second act that interfered with the audibility of the production and the clarity of it. That is incredibly specific. Then you kind of go into like why that impacted the show. As I just said, and it interfered with like the actual legibility of the experience and was noticeably disruptive for the audience. And then from there, kind of being like I'm still going to connect and contextualize that in my review and be like, despite that, I think that is a thing that they can clean up as they go on. I hope that they do. And there's a lot of other stuff that's working in this show specifically. And here is whom I think will enjoy this experience about the plight of dancers. I think that even when you are being critical, you have to think about who, if you're not the intended audience, if it didn't work for you, whom might it work for? And is the thing you're criticizing, can it get better? Because there are some things that you can't, like for instance, if I'm critical of the costume design or the script, for instance, those are things that are not going to be able to change. And so I'm really going to be incredibly thoughtful about those elements rather than like the sound failure. I'm just going to lay that out there. That happened. That is something that literally,
it's a glitch.
Yeah, it's undisputable. And I will also acknowledge that is just like, one of the things about going to live theater is that those things happen. It shouldn't. You want to, when you're going, and that is one of the things that you would hope gets cleaned up, and I'll nod to that. But yeah, I think that there is kind of also that difference there between those glitches and the more kind of text, like hard. These are things that are going to be really tricky to change. And so you have to be really thoughtful about that. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, the negative parts is the hardest part of what we do in these, for sure. And I know I agonize over those reviews, especially when I know the theaters worked really hard on that production, and for whatever reason, I just find things that weren't good. The easy road is to gloss over them or ignore them altogether. And to be completely honest, we do have a handful of theater bloggers in Colorado who do just that. But as we've grown OnStage Colorado into the top site for theater reviews in the state with 165 reviews last year, our goal is to provide honest, thorough reviews of everything we see, and that's the mission.
Yeah, I think kind of nodding back to those OnStage blog posts about community theater reviews, we're in the Colorado market. I think we're not really in a place where we're having those overly mean, critical, cruel reviews right now. No. I like that Chris Peterson was suggesting. I think I err much more on the Skip Malone perspective that we do need to review community theaters honestly, as I've articulated throughout this, while also still, again, respecting the artistry that goes into it. And I think here at OnStage Colorado, we've definitely, I've heard from folks that it was like OnStage used to be a lot nicer. And I think there have been some growing pains as we've kind of OnStage did start from a place of being more about, there's no other voices here. We just need to uplift the theater community. Exactly. I know from you, that's exactly why you started it. And as we've matured, and there are other now theater blogs who are doing that kind of cheerleader work, OnStage is maturing, and I think taking on that more critical voice and filling that void that is being left in the Colorado marketplace since pretty much every single newspaper outlet in the state has just destroyed all theater criticism. It's gone from everywhere except for the occasional piece that gets in here into the Post or Westward every now and then. But by and large, that's gone. And so I think I speak for both of us when I say that we really do see OnStage Colorado maturing into that leading critical voice for the state. And as we kind of go through that process, we really appreciate getting feedback from folks along the way. I know all of my information, my personal information, is very publicly available. You can, my phone number is on my website. People call me and I'll pick up pretty much as long as people want to engage in a good faith, honest conversation about the work. You know what? But I love the engagement. I'm happy to talk to people as long, particularly if they want to, if they're like, I quibble with you on this. Why did you say this? Can you explain more? I'm always happy to talk through that kind of stuff. And hearing from folks, good or bad, is always really rewarding because it means that folks are engaging with the work.
Yeah. Yeah, those emails that we get, either way, whether they're critical or sometimes they're emails thanking us for something that was critical, but that they thought was fair.
Exactly.
Yeah. The reality is that directors and usually the cast members know better than anyone how well a show is put together, where the weak links are, and that kind of thing. So we may be telling them something they already know, but maybe didn't want to hear, or we're hoping others wouldn't notice. And sometimes their reaction is to kind of get pissed about it, and that's human nature.
Yeah, and because I know sometimes I hear from people who just tell me, you got it completely wrong, which is perfectly fair. For instance, I know that I have had people who, when I give a critical review to a performer or something, they'll provide some behind the scenes information that is just like, I could not have possibly known that, me or any of your audience members. And so because of that, I'm kind of like, that fact is kind of irrelevant. I understand it on a human level, and I'm like, maybe that might be worthy of like a feature store news story, depending on like the specific circumstances. But as a reviewer, I write about what I see as an audience member, not really about my kind of role as a reporter and like actor A was sick or this designer quit 3 days before tech. That is not my job when I am in the review chair.
Absolutely. So one other thing I wanted to touch on is the conflict of interest piece. So just, we do take advertising from some theaters, and can be a little tricky to navigate that at times. And yes, we've had some theaters stop their ad buys with us because they didn't like a review. And even if I regret that lost revenue, to me, it's well worth it to never compromise the editorial integrity of OnStage Colorado for a few bucks. And generally speaking, I think our advertisers would rather see an unbiased, honest forum for theater criticism rather than one that does any kind of pay to play, ever.
But isn't it more challenging when that separation between editorial and advertiser is fuzzy? Like, you're operating both at OnStage as the editor and the publisher.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is OnStage Colorado is the first time I've ever held the publisher role, really. In my years as a newspaper editor, I was often on the wrong side of the publisher, and there were a number of occasions where things I'd written or allowed to be published resulted in, advertisers pulling ads and lost revenue. And I definitely would hear that from the publishers. But for the most part, I was also fortunate to have publishers who stood behind the newsroom, and that push and pull is something that's kind of part of my DNA. So even if it hasn't happened very often, if a theater says, we're pulling our ads because we didn't like your review, my only response is to say, thanks for your business, but it changes nothing. And I've just got to keep that, that's separate.
I mean, that certainly is great to hear as a writer who is known to write potentially, as we've been talking about, perhaps divisive takes, and maybe has been the subject of some of those theaters' not favorable reactions, let's say. So it really means a lot as a writer and as a journalist, and in 2026 when there is a lot of scrutiny on this industry and in this profession, that to know that sites like OnStage Colorado have my back as a writer, because I want to be able to just speak my mind and have other people speak their mind too, without worrying about that.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right. Well, to wrap this up, I would just say that, theater criticism only has value if it's honest to the audience trying to decide how to spend their evening, to the art form itself, and to the practitioners who want to grow. The goal's never to be the bad guy or the good guy. Pulling punches doesn't serve anyone. And the theaters we cover deserve to be taken seriously enough to receive a real opinion, and done right. A tough review is it's a form of respect, right?
I absolutely think so. It's I think that's the right way to think about it. I'm gonna, and just know that even if I write a bad review about you this time, I'm gonna keep showing up for you. I'm here for the theater community. I think you think the same thing, Alex. One bad show does not a bad company make. I think it's one night, it's one experience, and I respect you enough as an artist to tell you honestly that it did not work this one time around. But I'm going to come back the next time, and I'm going to give you another chance because it's a new show, and you deserve that respect as an artist. Okay, now we are going to throw to a conversation that you had with Tess, Neel and Rhianna DeVries from the Denver Ensemble Theater.
All right, today we are talking to some folks from the Denver Theatre Ensemble. So on the podcast today, we've got the artistic director, Rhianna DeVries, and producing director, Tess. Neel, welcome to the OnStage Colorado podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I first wanted to start by asking how, so it's not often we see a artistic director and a producing director. So can you explain how you two work together to make things happen with Denver Theatre Ensemble?
Yeah, absolutely. So with being producing director, my role is really more on the technical side of things and kind of bringing together design teams, making sure that like contracts are signed. So producing director and managing director are kind of interchangeable. And my job title, I guess you could call me either one, but I help manage like all of the kind of admin and technical side of things and kind of help with the producing side of stuff. So I help source all of our materials and make sure that sets are being built and speakers are being plugged in and everything's kind of working. And then Rhianna, as our artistic director, handles all things artistic. Rhianna, do you want to talk a little bit more about artistic direction?
God, I dare you to try and stop me. I get to do the fun, creative stuff of deciding what we do with our season, deciding how the art we make aligned with our vision and continues to explore the way that we center process in everything that we do. And so as artistic director, my job is to center the artistry and make sure that we can do everything that we do in an ethical, kind, excellent, artist-centered way.
Okay. And so, then the third person who's not with us today is Ina Marlowe, who's the board president for DTE. And so, she's got quite an impressive resume. She founded the Touchtone Theater, ran the Organic Theater Company. She worked with Edward Albee. She won a Jeff Award and all this amazing stuff. And I guess the theater grew out of Dream Scenes, a scene study class that Ina and Rhianna led together. Can you talk a little bit about how that came into being, how the theater, was like, hey, let's start a theater, and how it came into existence?
So Rhianna and I met freshman year of college at DU, and we were pretty unique in our class because we were both double majoring in theater and business. And so we were pretty unique in that situation, and we quickly became friends and really found out that we wanted to start our own theater company independently. And so we started to really kind of daydream about what that could be, what we could do with it, how we could grow it, what we could do with the theater. And it was a really fun daydream to have throughout college. And then junior year, Ina was a guest professor, and we both took her class, and we just all kind of kismically fell in love with each other. And Ina became our collective mentor, which was really lovely and very honoring for someone with that repertoire to pick us out of the group and kind of really put a lot of love and care into her relationship with us. And so after college, the three of us would daydream about what this theater could be. We worked on the board of a different theater company briefly after college that Ina brought us onto. And then kind of one thing led to another. And in 2023, all of our lives just kind of lined up perfectly. And we were sitting at brunch one day and we were talking about life and catching up because at that time, Rhianna was living back and forth between LA and New York, professionally acting. And I was having my own career in theater in Colorado, within the prison system. And things were just kind of kismically lining up where I was looking ready to change my trajectory, and Rhianna was getting ready to move back to Colorado, and Ina was like, I think this is time to start this thing. And so that's kind of how the three of us fell into each other's lives and really became the trio that we are. But Rhianna, do you want to talk a little bit more about dream scenes?
Yeah. I mean, when, like Tess said, we met Ina during our education at DU, and Ina has always been a huge advocate for artists and protecting the artistic spirit and the artistic process. She's always emboldened us to continue the tradition of upholding and empowering artists. And that included both Tess and I. To be honest with you, I'm so overwhelmed with all that Ina has given us. She is a total embodiment of how, as part of the artistic process, when you zoom out, as an artist, it's all about uplifting others, continuing to create the creative work, emboldening the people that are coming after you, and making sure that you're leaving the door open so that any artists that want to come through that door can. And Ina has opened so many doors for so many people. And so she kicked some of those doors open, man. Like, it's almost like I dare you to try and stop her. She just wouldn't take no. If she wanted to do something, she would do it. She would make it, and she would make it happen. And she would make sure everyone was taken care of along the way. And that included Tess and I. And I think Tess and I really just absolutely jived with that mentality and philosophy surrounding creating art from the beginning. And I think that, like Tess said, it just kind of cosmically aligned to make it so that we could create this thing where we could continue to make an artistic space that uplifts and emboldens artists. And so with Dream Scenes was kind of we were dipping our toes into what it would look like to create that artistic space. And Dream Scenes was this scene study class where we would take actors, bring them into the fold, and ask them, what do you want to do? What do you want to make? Don't wait to make it. We will help you make it now. Explore characters and scripts that maybe you've never seen before, you've never gotten to dive into. And you get to do that in a passionate, safe, creatively charged environment. And then after Dream Scenes happened, it just snowballed into, this should be a theater company. It should be process-based, artist-driven, and we should make sure that everyone involved feels creatively invigorated.
So, looking through your website, I noticed that there's a phrase "reinvent tradition" all over your materials. Can you give an example of what that means to you, whether it's the casting choice or the kind of material you want to do, or how you run the company? What does that mean?
Of course. So, reinventing tradition, when we came to that mission, it was sort of inspired by the relationship that we have with Ina. We have this intergenerational mentorship happening where she is emboldening us with all of this wisdom, empowering us with inspiration to make a space that we feel proud of being a part of. And reinventing tradition is about taking what works and leaving what doesn't. And moreover, we use the word reinvent because I like to apply a sort of scientific method to the processes that we have at hand. And so each season, I like to play with a different variable inside of the artistic process when I'm choosing our programming. Our first season, we did something old, something new. We did a world premiere and also a solo performance of The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. And then in our second season, we played with the variable of time in terms of how long a rehearsal process is or how long any one person on the creative team has spent working on a single piece. And then this year, the variable that we've changed is that we're doing all world premieres. And so reinventing tradition is all about uplifting and upholding the things that make art the most human thing it can be, a human experience, a universal experience, an experience that allows escape and reflection and connection, and leaving behind anything that could harm the artists or harm the audiences involved. It's about diverse casting choices, making choices that reflect our diverse world. It's about altering the artistic process in the rehearsal room, making sure that everybody's taken care of, making sure that we move with kindness and grace and are creatively open.
Okay. So for you mentioned The Wasteland in your first season, and then you did Circling. By season 2, you did Chekhov at Doll's House Part 2 and White Rabbit, Red Rabbit. So now that you've kind of got 2 seasons behind you, how did it go, and how is it informing, what surprised you, and what do you think you might be doing differently in season 3?
I mean, building this thing, even though we have this incredible leader on our side, Ina, who, as you mentioned, founded Touchstone, even though we have this wealth of information available to us and wisdom available to us through Ina, it's still an absolute learning curve. Wouldn't you say, Tess?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm really proud of our theater company and how much we have grown, specifically in just 2 seasons. If I were to throw numbers into the equation, we actually doubled the amount of audience attendance between season 1 to season 2. And we were able to significantly expand our ability to hire more artists. So we were able to do larger shows. With White Rabbit, Red Rabbit, for example, we hired 12 actors to perform that show. And that was our longest running our production for performances. And we did 12 productions or 12 performances for that production. And it's been really wonderful to see this thing that we have dreamt about for so long and talked about for so long grow and be received with such excitement. I would say that it's been really heartwarming to see that. And I think that starting your own business in general is really hard. But also starting a theater company is really hard. And being able to really see that growth so quickly has just been an absolute dream.
That's great. And, you mentioned that you both have a business background as well as the theater background. So how is that informing, I'm assuming you've got like a business plan and you're really trying to probably hit some numbers. And can you describe a little bit of what that's like so that you can sort of ensure the company's long-term success financially?
Yeah, absolutely. So for our first year, we spent a lot of time on our business plan, on our vision, on what our goals are long term. And what I think is also really wonderful is we even did a company check-in with the 3 of us. So me, Rhianna, and Ina all got together this past October, and we sat down and we revisited the business plan, because as much as you can put your hopes and dreams and goals and plan on a piece of paper, life happens and things happen, and it sometimes doesn't go exactly how you put it on paper. And so what I thought was really wonderful and beautiful about our team is we are always checking in with each other and checking in with our individual goals as artists, as well as our company goals as a collective, and really figuring out how this company can grow in a way that is fulfilling to us, for the artists that we employ, and maintaining a work-life balance in a way that is sustainable. Because that's also, I think, a large part of, for me at least, reinventing tradition. And there's, I think, this mentality around theater where you just got to put your head down and you just got to work to get the art done, and to get to the final product. And yes, there is elements of that in any business, especially art making and storytelling. But it's also about making sure that we're taking care of our people and creating a business that can sustain us also having a work-life balance. And so I think that that's been a large part of what our business plan has been, is figuring out how can we grow this business to be the best thing that we can put forward, while also keeping our autonomy as individual artists, as well as fulfilling, having a fulfilled life outside of just running a company as well. So I think that a large part of that has been us just constantly checking in with each other. In terms of growing the company, I mean, I think ideally, in our absolute dream world, we want this company to be lifelong. Rhianna and I talk about how we want to be doing this in 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. Like we want this company to grow and just be something that people can come to and seek out and feel a part of in a way that is new and refreshing and attainable. And so that's a large part of how we're trying to tackle our business plan. So not only do our artists feel taken care of, but we also can maintain this growth in a healthy way and not burn ourselves out.
And with that, it also comes to, we were really clear about how we prioritize where the money goes. And every single time we prioritize making sure that we can compensate our artists, at least competitively. We really want to work up to being able to pay folks equity rates. But from the beginning, it's always been our priority to make sure that folks are compensated for their time. Any amount that we can give, we give.
Okay. And so you have this strong DU connection, and you've been using the University of Denver's black box and white box spaces, which are, they're great little spaces, but they're on the smaller side. Is that something that you're going to continue? You're looking at a permanent space or a bigger space, or are you going to be good there for a while?
Yeah, we are so grateful for our connections to DU. Our professors from when we were in students there have been so wonderful and so supportive that even some of them are on our board and are always actively working with us. Stephen McDonald, who's one of my personal mentors since college, individually, he has been a godsend. He helps in every way that he possibly can. He's a huge advocate for us in that space and outside of DU as well. And we're so grateful for that support from all of the DU faculty in the theater department. And we do plan on continuing to flourish that partnership this summer, but we also are working towards expanding beyond that as well, and growing and finding spaces that also fit the growth of the company. And that's actually kind of happening starting this season. Rhianna, do you want to talk about all that?
We have a really exciting season coming this year. One of our partnerships is with Picnic Theater Company out in Steamboat Springs. And the way that that's looking is that we're partnering on 2 shows. Only one of the shows is going to take the DTE stage. We have a devised piece, and we have Romeo and Juliet that's been adapted for a cast of 5. And the way that that's looking is that the devised piece and Romeo and Juliet, they're going to be run in rep. The same cast will be used for both. And we'll have the devised piece hit the DTE stage, and then we'll go up to Steamboat, and then the cast will perform Romeo and Juliet and the devised piece in repertory in Steamboat Springs for the month of July. And then we'll come back down to DU, and we'll be doing Closing Times by Derek Murphy, which is a world premiere. It's very, very good. I'm very excited for that show. And after that, we have a benefit, which is being directed by one of DU's professors, Brandon Bruce, called The Orbital Decay of Saturn by Rook Riley. And so we're starting to expand into different spaces and forming partnerships with different arts organizations around Colorado. And it's been a real joy to hold hands across theater organizations.
Great. So that's your season?
That is our season.
All right. It's been announced.
There it is.
Yeah. So you're operating in a market with, the Denver Center, Curious Theater, the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, Aurora Fox, and some other established companies. What is Denver Theatre Ensemble? Where do you see it fitting into that ecosystem? And what are you offering that audiences maybe can't get at some of those other theaters?
Oh, that's such a good question. Honestly, the goal of Denver Theatre Ensemble is to be a home for artists. And I think that artists find their homes in all of the theaters that you listed. But more art is always good. And having more artistic spaces across the Denver landscape is always a good thing, in my opinion. And so it's about adding to the abundance of artistic sensibility that Denver has going for it. It's about creating more opportunities for artists and designers and theater workers and production managers and everyone involved in this absolute team sport. And it's about just creating more variety of culture and more opportunities for audiences to sit down and enjoy.
Great. All right. Well, any parting thoughts before we wrap up here? Tess, toss it to you.
I just first want to say thank you, Alex, for having us on here. We greatly appreciate the time to chat with you and share a little bit more about our small but mighty theater company that is actively growing and actively getting bigger. And I'm really excited for this season, and I'm really excited for people to see the work that we have planned. We have some really amazing artists involved in these shows. From a design aspect, we're actively working on auditions right now as well. And I know that Rhianna is going to find some incredible actors for the shows through that process. And I really hope that people are excited to see something new and different, especially with this, with our season focusing on world premieres and new works and what new stories we have to tell. I think it's going to be a really amazing season, and I'm really excited for people to see it. So thank you so much for having us.
Of course, yeah. Rhianna?
Oh, I thought Tess dropped the mic. I would mimic everything Tess said. We're just so grateful to be here making art. And thank you for having us.
Rhianna DeVries, Artistic Director, and Tess Neel, Producing Director with Denver Theatre Ensemble. Break legs out there. Thanks for coming on the podcast, and we look forward to seeing what you come up with out there.
Thank
you so much.
Well, that was a really awesome interview from a new up-and-coming company in Colorado.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun to talk to them.
All right, well, now we are going to close out our show, as usual, with our top 10 Colorado headliners, which are some of the shows coming up in next week or so that we think you should consider checking out. Alex, what do you got to start us off with?
The big boy's rolling into town, the Phantom of the Opera. So this is one that just comes around every year or two, the touring Broadway production at the Buell. So this will be up March 18th through April 5th. And, got to remember that there are still plenty of people that haven't seen it, younger people that, there's always time to get familiar with the Phantom, right?
I've never seen Phantom of the Opera, Alex.
What? Maybe you should get out and see this one.
I've seen the movie, but I was considering getting out to see it. But tickets are actually, Alex, tickets are pretty expensive. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not sure I'm willing to drop like was going to be like 150, starting at like $150 for one person. And I'm buying for two. So I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But
all right,
that's not to say that you shouldn't.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. What have you got?
My first pick is the stage production of Goodnight Moon / Goodnight Moon of Fibertail over at Parker Arts this March. So this is a 2-part thing. They've got the Fibertail part of this, which is a life-size hand-stitched replica of the iconic Great Green Room from Goodnight Moon, meticulously crafted by Colorado artist Dundee and Lee, that's on display in the area through the 27th of March. And if you have not seen this installation, it is incredible. When they say life-size, they do very literally mean it takes up the full scope of the room. And they have, out of yarn, meticulously made every single aspect that you remember from this book. And so that in and of itself is reason to go over to Parker Arts, but they're pairing that with a stage production of Goodnight Moon that is over from the Denver Center. Folks may remember that. They did it pre-pandemic, I believe, and then brought it back last year, and now it's over here at Parker Arts. So if you've got some young ones, or you are a lover of this book, have any nostalgia for it at all, get over to Parker Arts and check this out while it's still in the metro area.
All right. Sounds great. All right, my next headliner is a blink or you'll miss it kind of show, Pen Pals at Theater Aspen. It is playing just this weekend, March 20th and 21st. And it stuck out to me because I haven't seen Theater Aspen announce a show in a while. You know, they have a pretty robust summer program, but not as much in the winter. So this is a limited engagement. It's a story of a 50-year correspondence between two women, one in England and the other in New Jersey. So if you happen to be in Aspen, check out Pen Pals.
Nice. My next pick is the regional premiere of Aaron Riley's 2019 adaptation of Little Women, being staged by Family Theater over at the Parsons Theater in North Glen. This is Louise May Alcott's beloved story, The March Sisters. It's being directed by Shelley Gaza, I'm not quite sure what makes this adaptation unique, what the Riley spin of it all is, but I am going to go check it out this weekend, so I will be able to report back.
So next up is The Cottage at OnStage Theater in Fort Collins, March 21st through April 18th. So this is Sandy Rustin's sort of taking a page out of the Noel Coward book. It's kind of a sort of a wacky comedy set in 1923 in an English countryside inn that when I saw it at Platte Valley last year or so, I was a little tepid on the script itself, but it's got a lot of opportunities for great costumes and fun. You know, it's pretty funny. And so probably worth checking out. And I think you're going to go up and review that one, aren't you?
That is correct. I'm not able to make it out on their opening night the next Saturday, but I'm going the following weekend to check it out. Yeah, I'm very curious to see this. I love a drawing room comedy in theory. Mm-hmm. It's all about execution in this case, and I've heard from you as well as a couple other people that the script is maybe not the best, but on the same token, it keeps getting produced. So clearly, some folks in the theater community do see a lot of value in it, and so I'm curious to check this production out up in Fort Collins.
Yep. It makes me think that playwrights need to jump on this apparent appetite for newer drawing room comedies so they can wield all those British accents and fancy costumes.
Yeah, otherwise companies are just going to keep doing The Importance of Being Earnest because it sells out.
It does, yes. All right, what have you got next?
It's very, very different from a drawing room comedy. It is Cheap Thrills by Telluride Theater over at the Sheridan Opera House. This is their 2-day annual fundraiser that resurrects the raucous and raunchy variety shows of Telluride's vaudeville era, featuring dancing, comedy, acrobatics, and beautiful local women. That's their words, not mine. And its cheap thrill is the graduation of their beginner class. And so there's going to be a bunch of performances, comedies, and plenty of pasties.
I think that would be so much fun to check out that show at Telluride sometime. It's just so far away. Speaking of far away, Magic Circle players in Montrose are doing Proof, David Auburn's play, March 13th through 28th. So this is about a young woman who spent years caring for her brilliant but unstable father, a mathematician who's recently passed away. And so she's grappling with his death and wondering, worrying that she might have inherited her father's mental illness along with his mathematical genius. So that's a pretty cool play for Magic Circle to do out there in Montrose.
Mm-hmm. My next pick is a musical, Bonnie and Clyde. This is the adaptation by Frank Wildhorn that tells the story of the infamous Depression-era outlaws, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. And it blends rockabilly, blues, and gospel music to tell this story. It's being produced by Bright Heart Stages over at the People's Building. I've not seen a production by Bright Hearts before, so that alone piqued my interest. And then the cast included Genesee Pierce, who we gave an Oscar award for her performance in Bright Star over at Candlelight. Jazz Mueller, also in that production. Patrick Case, who folks might recognize as Olaf most recently over in Frozen at the Arvada Center, but he's done a ton of work around town. And Jalen Courtney Webb, just to name a few of the folks who are in this cast. So I was like, I absolutely have to get my ass over to the People's Building. So I'm going to be seated there on the Denver Actors Fund night to check this story out.
Great. Look forward to hearing about that. All right, my last headliner is, this is the second weekend coming up of the Women's Theater Festival that Millabo Art Theater does every year down in Colorado Springs. This runs through March 22nd. It's original short plays, poetry, monologues, movement, and dance created for the theater. So that if you're in the Springs, I want to check out some new stuff, some different kinds of works by women there at Millabo.
Cool. My final pick is a new immersive work. It's Red Willow, which is being produced by Control Group Productions, and it's their first entirely new in-house work since 2022. So this performance is a ritualistic preparation for communal resistance that is shared over a 2.5-mile journey with audiences through the woods over at South Platte Park in Littleton at dusk. And
wow.
It says that the piece is designed to confront surging fascism, climate catastrophe, and the escalating brutality against the environment. And they also note that it is the first work that they've created with an all-male cast, and it's designed to probe at the burgeoning social crisis around the embodiments of masculinity.
Whoa, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, they certainly have a lot of themes at play here. No denying that.
Yeah. All right. Well, new reviews on the site include, or coming up, fiction from Three Leeches, Just Like Us at Su Teatro, A Chorus Line at Performance Now, all Toni Tresca's. Birthday Candles coming up at Curious, Daughtering from Dirty Fish at the Dairy, which you just talked about. And upcoming, we'll have a review of the production of Love Letters at the Backstage. They're kind of skipping the traditional February time frame of Love Letters and doing it in March, which is interesting. The Wiz at Town Hall, Little Women at Family, and the fortunate, we were just talking about Bonnie and Clyde at the People's Building, so you'll have that.
Yeah. Well, that is all for this episode of the OnStage Colorado podcast. If you want to stay up to date on what is going on in theaters across the state, be sure that you are subscribed to the OnStage Colorado Theater Blast, which is the weekly newsletter that comes out every single Thursday and includes all the new reviews as well as the calendar entries for the upcoming weekend so that you can plan your theatrical outings.
Yeah. All right. As always, thanks so much for listening. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca, and we'll see you at the show.
Hey, it's Alex here, founder, editor, and publisher of OnStage Colorado. Thanks so much for listening. As other publications have stepped away from covering Colorado theater, we've stepped up. In 2025 alone, we published over 165 reviews, making sure our vibrant theater community in Colorado gets the attention it deserves. But we can't do this without your support. If you value having a dedicated source for Colorado theater journalism, please consider making a donation at onstagecolorado.com. Every contribution helps us continue this work. And if you're not already subscribed, sign up for our free weekly Theater Blast newsletter. Every Thursday morning, we deliver the latest reviews, theater news, and upcoming show listings right to your inbox. You'll find the sign up at onstagecolorado.com. Thanks again for being part of the OnStage Colorado community. We'll see you at the theater.